Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle, and we are brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate you being here. We have the one, the only Big Ten Ted with us today. Going to be playing some fact or fiction about the Big Ten. There's a lot of things we talk about here on the Big Ten Huddle. Of course, we cover every single Big Ten team. However, there are things that we talk about, that we think about more than anything else. I got 5 burning statements. I'm going to pose them to Ted, and he's going to let you know fact or fiction, and we'll talk about it all. Ted, thank you for being here, man.
Oh, it's awesome to be here. I love talking about it. So let's get into it.
All right, let's make it happen. Now, of course, you can find Ted's work for Big Ten Ted and also Ted on the Ducks. Ted, you want to let people know where they can find your content at before we get started?
Yeah, on the Big Ten side, you can find it on YouTube as well. Big Ten Ted on YouTube, at Big Ten Ted on Twitter. It's on podcast platforms as well. Then I've got some Oregon-specific content. That Show Out West is the name of the pod. You can find that on YouTube and the podcast platforms at Ted and the Ducks. Also doing some contributed written work over at Scoop Duck, a part of the On3 Network, the Oregon site over there. So plenty of places, whether you're a Duck fan or a Big Ten fan, to find me wherever you want.
Busy man.
Yep.
So go check out his content. Listen, this content we make, it does not come without labor. So anytime guys out here like Ted and myself are making content, we appreciate it. Just that you go enjoy it, that you have it, and helps us out for sure. So, all right, Ted, let's get into this right now. We got 5 burning statements we're going to get to, and I want to make sure we have ample time to talk about them all. So let's start real fast. Let's rip off the Band-Aid. Let's start talking about the playoffs right away. All right. We got some teams here in the Big Ten right now. Of course, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, they are all the favorites to make the playoffs this year. The question is, could the Big Ten get a 4th team, dare I say a 5th team, into the playoffs? Ted, one of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Maryland, that's right, Maryland, you're 4-0, and I mention you here, Nebraska, USC, or Washington will make the college football playoffs. One of those teams will.
I don't think Maryland will make the playoff. I just want to say that right off the bat.
But listen, we got some Terps fans that love to watch the show, and we got to get. They're 4-0. We got to get it to them.
Absolutely, no, you got to keep it going. Prove me wrong. Absolutely. I'm gonna go fact. On it. Indiana's sitting at number 11 right now. Okay, so they're in a good position as we stand. Now they got to go on the road to Oregon. They got to go on the road to Penn State. So they got to take care of business in all the other games. But if you look at the back half of their schedule, it's very manageable, especially considering the way they're playing right now. If you're an Indiana fan, you have just become the biggest Illinois fan out there. If Illinois goes like 9-3, 10-2, if they're ranked, let's just say they're ranked at the end of the year, that's a big win for you, especially if you beat them by especially considering you beat them by 53 points. So that's a huge win for it. So Indiana's, I think, in a really good spot. I think the winner of Michigan USC, when they match up a little bit later on during the season, that game right there, they're in a good spot. USC's interesting because they're entering a 4-game stretch right now that was like going to really make or break how they're sitting. If you're kind of like looking at USC, they're the number 1 offense in the country according to a lot of metrics. Jaden Mayafa's playing much better than I originally thought he would this season. But USC, they got Illinois, and they're favored by 6.5 this week. They got to play Michigan. They get Michigan at home, though, right? Michigan's got to travel across the country to the Coliseum. Okay, you could maybe get that one done. Notre Dame on the road is going to be tough, but it might be doable, going on the road to South Bend. And then they got Nebraska at home. Like if you win 3 of those games, you lose to Notre Dame, you're in a 1-loss spot. And by the end of the year, you could have a ranked, Illinois could be ranked, Michigan could be ranked, maybe Nebraska could be ranked when all is said and done. And then, you got Oregon later on. That's going to be a really tough matchup. But you go 10-2 with the schedule, USC could be in a really good position. I feel really good about them. Washington, I'm a lot lower on right now. They got 3 great players on their offense, and then it kind of takes a little bit of a nosedive after that. So, they kind of need to get better over time at the lines of scrimmage. But USC, Michigan, Indiana, Nebraska are probably my top candidates. Yeah, am I really low on Illinois after I think there were kind of parts of their team were maybe exposed a little bit in that last game against Indiana. I know like 6 of their 7 defensive backs were out during that game, but still there's a lot more I think to be able to clean up there. But yeah, I think I can get on board with that. right now. So yeah, I like those schools that I mentioned right now. I bet the one that I probably Indiana and USC are maybe the top two that I would favor to maybe get to that point.
That's what I was going to ask you next. On FanDuel, they
Yeah.
have the odds for all of these teams, and I was going to ask not just your preference, but who do you think are the two Big Ten teams that I mentioned here that you think have the best odds to make the college football playoffs right now?
Yeah, Indiana and USC. As I said, here's the thing about Indiana: they can't do kind of what they did last year. Last year's one loss. This year would be two losses. Like, they can't just get the doors blown off of them in their loss. They can't lose by 20, 25, whatever points to Oregon on the road and Penn State on the road. They need to be competitive, because you can hear everybody in the committee, you can hear all the SEC people talking about it. Oh, Indiana got the doors blown off of them in 2 games. And whatever, we'll see what happens with the rest of their schedule, where those people are ranked. But and then this time you're 10-2 instead of 11-1, so we're going to leave you out because you didn't play well against good teams. So they need to be competitive in those games at Oregon and at Penn State a little bit later on during the season. But I really like the way things are setting up for USC. There's parts like the secondary that needs to get better. The thing about USC is, like, the good parts of their team, I think, are really good, and maybe as good as any. Like, defensive line is good. Wide receivers are if they can get Jacoby Lane healthy, I mean, that's as good of a wide receiver tandem as there is in college football. And Jade Mailata keeps doing what he's doing. But the parts that aren't as good could be a little bit of an Achilles heel. So with the Trojans. So yeah, I feel pretty good about those squads.
Yeah, USC, the way their schedule lines up, there's a good chance here. You obviously have Illinois this weekend. You got to get this game, and then Illinois, they're struggling with injuries right now. So although it's on the road, it is a good opportunity for you. And then they get the bye, and then Michigan. Michigan is also another team up there with high odds to possibly make the college football playoffs, as we just mentioned them. But that Notre Dame game, and then Oregon still on the schedule.
Right.
USC is going to have to beat Illinois and Michigan, and then they could possibly get in losing to Notre Dame and Oregon, but you're banking on a lot that Notre Dame looks good and does not lose to Arkansas this weekend. I'm going to read off the odds really fast on FanDuel for these teams, just so that way if you're thinking, hey, might want to put some money down, you can go ahead and do so. The team with the highest odds is, in fact, the Indiana Hoosiers, plus 120 or 172, I apologize. USC is right there behind them, plus 210, followed by Michigan, plus 330. And then you got Washington up there as well, plus 410. We'll see what that looks like after the Ohio State game. If they get a win against Ohio State, they're going to skyrocket up there for sure. And then on top of that, you have Illinois at plus 2,500, Nebraska a little bit higher at plus 1,800. And then, you know what, just for kicks and giggles, Maryland plus 5,000. Okay, all right. Give us what we need here. Okay, that's what it is. If you want to go put some money on Maryland, I don't endorse it, but you could certainly do so. Last question, Ted. Could the Big Ten get 5 teams in? Could the Big Ten, maybe the SEC only gets 3 again, and the ACC only gets 1? The Big Ten gets 5 teams in. I think it could happen. What do you think?
I'm trying to do the math in my head with some of these other teams. If the ACC just gets Miami, and Miami just like separates themselves. Florida State would probably have to lose a couple of times. Clemson's already taken themselves out, and the rest of the ACC probably isn't up to par there. The Big 12 gets like Texas Tech in, right? If they kind of separate themselves from the pack a little bit. Yeah, the SEC, if they beat up on each other yet again, starts with Alabama and Georgia this weekend. It's possible, because here's the thing. You could get to those teams I mentioned, Indiana, USC. Indiana could go 10-2. I mean, USC could, they could go like 11-1 if they beat Notre Dame and just lose to Oregon, maybe a little bit later on, or vice versa. Or no, that'd be 12-0. But you get the general idea. 11-1, I should say. They could get in. That's the thing about these big conferences. You could have a bunch of teams go 10-2. You could have a bunch of teams go 11-1 because they don't really play each other that often. But it's possible. I think for that to happen, like, it seems, oh boy, yeah, that's. I think a lot of things in other leagues would have to happen. And if some people have their way, it's definitely not going to happen. It would be a stretch. It would be a stretch. But if that does happen for whatever reason, I mean, just, this momentum that the Big Ten, the best conference by, not only folks like you and I, but other folks nationally, it's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. But that's a stretch. It's a stretch to me. But especially if like Indiana, if they lose to those two that I mentioned, Penn State and Oregon, and it's by like double digits, and you look at the rest of their schedule, and you don't have a bunch of quality wins, they could keep them out. I don't love it because I think Indiana's really good. Mm-hmm. But that's that could be a reasoning to maybe keep them out of the tournament.
If it happens, I think it has to be probably Indiana and Michigan together to get in there, because the way Indiana's schedule works out, you need Oregon to be good enough to lose that game, and you need Penn State to be good enough to lose that game. Who would Oregon have to beat to get a little bit more of that credibility? They'd have to beat USC. Well, Indiana doesn't play USC or Michigan, but you know who does play USC? Michigan goes all the way out west for that game. So you're doing a little bit of schedule stuff here, and then like you said, you got to rely on stuff in other places. But it's definitely an interesting conversation, an interesting thing to think about. All right, we got 4 more. Let's get to it. So Ted, one thing we've talked about a lot on this channel is the out-of-conference scheduling for the Big Ten. I was in favor of what they were doing, especially with Kirk Cinetti going after the SEC. I said, I love this, keep doing it, type of stuff, love giving it to them. But now the SEC has they put their money where their mouth is at this point. They're going to play 9 conference games, and then they're going to require 1 Power 4 opponent from outside of the SEC as well. The ACC is doing something similar to this. However, they have 17 teams, so the 9-game conference schedule doesn't work out for them, but they're pretty much doing the same thing when you look at it. The Big 12 has already been doing this. Breck McMurphy posted today that sources in the Big Ten are saying the Big Ten is not going to require that this happen for the Big Ten, that they have to play an out-of-conference Power 4 opponent. Now, most teams do, but there are 4 teams in the conference right now. I believe they are Nebraska, Washington, and I forget who the other 2 are. I'll look it up here in just a second. But there's 4 teams in the Big Ten that are not doing that at this point. Do you think, let me say the statement, the Big Ten is making a smart move to be the only Power 4 conference to not require a Power 4 out-of-conference game?
Boy, that's an interesting question, because I think like what they're doing now, kind of everything, all these behind the scenes things that are going on, it all kind of has to do with this playoff negotiation that's happening, and what the format exactly is going to be. I mean, this is kind of like a little bit of reverse psychology, where the SEC had 8 conference games, kind of pad their schedule, more teams getting the bowl eligibility, but more teams kind of getting into the playoff. As long as it's not, required by any, we know there's not really nobody looks over college football really as a sport. I mean, it's going to kind of pad things out a little bit, maybe give you a better chance to get into the playoff a little bit. Maybe it's like, this kind of crossed my mind, maybe a little bit of bargaining. Tony Petitti be like, hey, we'll play that 10th Power 4 game if we get 4-4, 2-2, 1-1-1, or 2-1-1-3, or whatever the format. That's kind of, it seems like there's been a little bit of bargaining to be, okay, we're going to do this. So the SEC plays 9 games. And then, okay, now when they play 9 games, let's do this to kind of get, to maybe get the format that way. Smart move. I mean, if you want more teams with more wins, I think so, and it, if you see more rewards right now than things that hurt you, then why not go for it? It's just interesting how the tables have turned a little bit with the whole SEC and the Big Ten. But to me, it kind of seems like there's a little bit of a bargaining chip, because I think the ultimate goal for Tony Petitti is he wants to, he's been the champion of that playoff format. And maybe this is something that he's kind of holding out on, and maybe they'll go to, because the Tony Petitti said on the Joel Klatt show this summer, it says like, we need more big time games, right? We need more of those types of matchups. And I think that playoff format, allows you to play those more of those games, because it's based on conference standings instead of maybe, all these other things that are going on with the at-large bids right now. So I'll go smart for now, because it might be a little bit of a bargaining chip to kind of get the format that they want later.
Yeah, it's all about those automatic qualifiers, right? Tony Petitti, he lays down in bed at night and he's got an automatic qualifier stuffing next to him or something, because he loves himself that idea. And to be fair, I like the idea too. I like that Tony Petitti is playing hardball with them, but I would like to see, like LSU Penn State or something like that. That'd be really cool to see.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to number 3 here, Ted. We're going to go through these ones a little bit quicker since we spent so much time on the first one, but I think these ones are ones that can be a bit more straightforward. So, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, we talked about the teams that could possibly make the playoffs. These are the 3 teams that are most likely to make it. But their season doesn't just end there. These teams want more than the playoffs, each and every one of them. So, Ted, Ohio State, Oregon, or Penn State, the 3 teams with the highest odds to win the national championship right now in certain places. I believe it is that way on FanDuel. Yes, Georgia has dropped. It is Ohio State plus 600, Penn State plus 650, Oregon plus 700. Right now, the 3 highest odds teams to win the national championship, Ohio State, Oregon, or Penn State, will win the national championship. Fact or fiction?
I'm gonna go fact, and I'll kind of go with the I'll kind of hit you with maybe some of the bigger contenders. Miami they're looking like a squad right now. They've got some good play on the defensive line, Carson Beck, and that they look to be them and Georgia. I think are maybe the biggest threat. LSU is kind of a weird one to me. I mean, have they gotten better on defense? Yeah, they've gotten better on defense, but you look at some of these games. I mean, that win over Clemson doesn't really pack the punch that it did in week 1. They had a game against Louisiana Tech that didn't look impressive. Was Florida 20-10? It's just they just don't seem super impressive right now. And the thing about Miami, the thing about Mario is there's always a game with Mario Cristobal, even going back to his days as head coach at Oregon. There's always a game that he should win that he doesn't. You remember the Georgia Tech debacle? Was that 2 years ago now? Something like that. So
it was 2 years ago.
That's something to keep an eye on there. But I just look at these Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. They're just they're so complete. They're so complete right now, from offense to quarterback to defense. Of course, each team kind of has their different strengths. I mean, Texas, their defense is great, but the offense certainly, Arch isn't what he expected to be. And you kind of go down the list, then the Big Ten just seems so strong at the top, more strong at the top than anybody. You can argue about depth, but I think when you talk about those contenders, I think you got to go with the Big Ten versus the field.
I love it. Ted, man, your answer so far, you're killing it. I love it. Let's go to number 4 here. The Big Ten has the best collection of quarterbacks in college football. You're talking about the entire conference. Yep. They have the best collection of quarterbacks in college football over any other conference. Fact or fiction?
Oh, that's fact. I mean, man, I tell you what, me growing up, I graduated high school in 2010, 2011, growing up in Wisconsin and kind of taking in all this Big Ten content over the years. The conference, man, it has grown. It has grown significantly. And the quarterback play, I never would have guessed growing up when, the West Coast had a bunch of good quarterbacks and, SEC had some good quarterbacks and the Big 12, remember the Big 12 was this offensive powerhouse in the mid to late 2000s, Texas Tech and Texas and Oklahoma State, all those other programs. And now the Big Ten is just sitting there and they've got, it's amazing how much depth there is. You can put out a quarterback power ranking and, people might be, oh, my guy's number 9. What the heck? My guy's number 9 in your rankings. I'll be like, dude, look at the guys that are 1 through 8. It's amazing to see the depth. From Oregon's Dante Moore to when you look at Julian Sayin at Ohio State, who's got the highest completion percentage in the league right now. You look at Maava, what he's doing at USC. Damon Williams is a different kind of more of an electric quarterback at Washington. Then you get guys like, a Dylan Raiola's probably in the middle somewhere. And then you got great true freshmen like Malik Washington at Maryland, Bryce Underwood at Michigan. It's crazy. Outside of, a handful of guys, all these guys are great quarterbacks and could probably start at a lot of programs nationwide. It's what makes this league so fun and so interesting and so good. And maybe when we get to, now we're of course in conference play, maybe you get to bowl games later, they're going to really stand out because of their quarterback play. It's insane. Even like a guy at Rutgers, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, the way he's developed and improved so much, he's second in the Big Ten in passing. Imagine telling that to Minnesota fans 2 years ago or 2 or 3 years ago. It's like that. What? That doesn't even make any sense. But it seems like all these quarterbacks are just maturing that much more and developing. And, these new guys are coming in and having a lot of success. I think Big Ten getting to that level with quarterbacks has a lot to do with the West Coast programs. Okay. Oregon, USC have a high track record of cute quarterback play. You look at, Washington has had some good quarterback play, of course, in recent history with Michael Penix. So, it's altogether, it's amazing. Some of these guys that are going to be in the middle of the pack could, they're going to put up some big numbers this year.
Oh, for sure. And I think you have guys like Julian Sayin and Bryce Underwood, just young.
Yep.
I mean, they're both freshmen. Julian Sayin, redshirt freshman, of course. However, these are both freshmen that in years past, you would have been hoping for a team like Ohio State to have the best quarterback in the conference. And I'm not saying Julian Sayin isn't, but there have been other quarterbacks with more experience that have looked better so far. And Julian Sayin, he played a pretty conservative game against Texas, you would say. So he still has room to show it this season. But Bryce Underwood, he's electric. He has a great arm. And then, man, probably in bottom 3 or 4 in the conference at quarterback, you have the winningest quarterback in college football history in Mark Gronowski. I know he's not been super fantastic this year, but what other conference can say, a bottom 3, a bottom 4 quarterback in the conference is the winningest quarterback in college football history? Like you said, you look at your quarterback, you're like, oh, really? 9th in power rankings? That really stinks. Take into account, Mark Gronowski is all the way down there. It's crazy, and I don't think there's another conference that even compares to the quarterback play in the Big Ten. All right, Ted, this is probably the one that will make your head think the most, and viewers, listeners, I'm gonna try to explain this one. Okay, so the Big Ten, Deshaun Foster has been fired. But I'm saying right now, okay, so Tim Skipper is at UCLA. I'm saying as of right now, the conference will have 4 or more new head coaches at the beginning of next season. So you're looking at possible firings, you're looking at possible guys moving on. If James Franklin wins a national championship, does he go someplace else? I'm not saying that would happen, but I'm just saying, like, guys could move on and go someplace else. So I'll say it one more time, Ted. The conference will have 4 or more new head coaches at the beginning of next season than what they have currently right now. Fact or fiction?
Oh boy, that is a tough one. I'm gonna lean towards fiction, maybe right around the 3 mark. So you kind of gotta talk it out a little bit. I don't think Tim Skipper is going to be retained over there at UCLA. So UCLA is going to be 1. I still don't know about Wisconsin. I mean, that's the one. If you kind of look at all the teams right now, Purdue's not the, they just got Barry Odom in there. I mean, Maryland, they got to win. They play UCLA later on this year. They beat UCLA. That's an improvement from last year. Mike Loxley's been doing some great things on the recruiting trail. They got Zion Ely committed, and they kind of want to be able to hang on to that, maybe build that future a little bit. Malik Washington, of course, is doing good things there. So if it's not Maryland and it's not Purdue, maybe David Braun at Northwestern is one if they kind of take a little bit of a nosedive later on this season. So if you get UCLA, you get Northwestern, that gets you to 2 if indeed that happens. And then maybe we get one where one person moves to another school and it's not necessarily a firing. One I would keep an eye on is actually Jonathan Smith moving possibly to UCLA. Okay, because before he moved to Michigan State, the furthest he'd always lived west of the Rocky Mountains, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And he's got some connections out there on the West Coast. I believe if Chip Kelly would have resigned or left or whatever in January, I think Jonathan Smith would be the head coach at UCLA right now. He would have went from Oregon State to UCLA. I feel pretty strongly about that. So him moving back to UCLA, that's a tough ask right now. I would not touch UCLA with a 10-foot pole right now. That's just me. But maybe Jonathan Smith feels a little bit different. That's kind of been floated out there. Does Kirk Ferentz retire at the end of the year? That's something that always gets brought up each and every single year. PJ Fleck was connected with the UCLA job for a little bit the first time around. That's something you got to keep in mind. Maybe in the back of your head, does a school out there throw a big old bag for Kurt Signetti, somewhere? Who knows? If the Florida job comes open, Jed Fish is an alumnus, so he could move down there. That's where I think you get the 3rd one. We could get 2, but I just, I feel like there won't be more than a couple of firings within the league this year, unless something dramatic happens with some of these schools. But yeah, I tend to say fiction. I tend to say a little bit lower with maybe some movement going on to get to the 3rd.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think there's so many talking points around it all, and the UCLA job opening up is interesting because you would think, oh, okay, somebody hires away, and you get a new head coach over there at UCLA. But it's a Big Ten coach, so would it really be a new head coach in the Big Ten, right? So maybe if Jonathan Smith
Oh,
goes from Michigan State, then
yeah.
it's the way the statement is worded, right? So
Okay.
because I thought
Yeah.
about that as well. It's like, well, if Jonathan Smith goes, but then he's not a new head coach of the Big Ten, but then who does Michigan
Oh,
State hire? So it's a fun little statement, fun little exercise to go through it all. Let's end on this, Ted. You mentioned
sure.
Wisconsin, and I know,
Yeah.
and I don't love talking Luke Fickell and this kind of stuff. I've kind of just said my piece at this point, which is I think it's time to move on. I don't think Luke Fickell is a bad head coach. I think he's had some tough stuff happen with him, but I think for fan support and everything else, if the fans were still supporting him and you were still seeing a bunch of fans there at the games, I think maybe you could hang on to him. But this Maryland loss this weekend, really, really tough to stomach at home. Luke Fickell's, they're doing the fire Fickell chants. I hate to see it, but I thought maybe it would happen this last weekend. It didn't. I'm looking to maybe December now because the buyout gets lower. I want Luke
Yeah.
Fickell to stay there because I still believe in him. But I'll be honest, it's getting harder and harder by the season. What are your thoughts on Fickell?
Well, you know who else wants Luke Fickell to stay there? Minnesota Golden Gopher fans, Iowa Hawkeye fans,
Yes. Yes.
rivals of Wisconsin. I feel like I have a unique perspective for many different reasons on this. I grew up in the state. I spent a lot of Saturdays in Madison. I've only been to a few Badger games necessarily in my life, but my parents have a small business where they sell fresh produce on the Madison Farmers Market on Saturdays. So we see, the parades going by and Bucky riding on the float and all this stuff. And, I'd walk to the game to kind of be a part of the atmosphere and all that stuff. And it's just like, man, there was such high energy through the years. I mean, so many from Barry to Burt, even a little bit of Gary Anderson, which Badger fans don't love to talk about, but they would love to have Gary Anderson now from what they've gotten with Luke Fickell. But there just seems to be like no energy for what the energy was then, kind of seeing it growing up, and now kind of seeing what it is now. It's so sad to see, because you woke up, whether you were a fan of Purdue or Michigan or Iowa, you always knew, okay, Wisconsin's going to line up. They're going to have some beefy farm boys up front. They're going to have a good running back. They're going to run the ball. It's who they are. But Luke Fickell said, yeah, that DNA you've been working 30 years to build up. Yeah, let's get rid of that. Let's do something else. And obviously it hasn't panned out. I think, but here's the thing about Fickell. At the time, it was a home run hire. Like, there's people kind of coming up, saying, coming out of the woodwork, I told you so. I'm like, no, nobody told you so. I think the I told you so came in when he kind of hired Phil Longo. I think that was the worst thing that he did right off the bat and kind of changed the system. Everybody kind of looks at, hey, we should have hired Jim Leonard. We should have kept on Jim Leonard. I mean, that's another unique perspective I had. My dad went to high school with Jim Leonard's dad up in northern Wisconsin. So I wanted Jimmy as much as anybody. But then when Luke Fickell got hired, I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, that's the hire. That's the hire. I was a little bit uneasy when they went with the offensive scheme and system that they did. I'm like, let's wait and see. And then, people have been talking about this week about the financial support or lack of thereof at Wisconsin. We'll see. They're building some new facilities. So maybe does the money that they're spending on that, how does that affect a possible buyout? I mean, there's so many things at stake here. It's just, it's been a rough situation, and it's not for lack of talent. They've been recruiting pretty well. They've had bad luck with injuries. It's tough. It's tough. And it's just so weird to me seeing what I saw for all those years and then seeing this now they're just the butt of the joke right now in the conference. So you're right. They need a reboot because you talk about money, but the longer you push this thing down the line with Fickell, you'd be like, oh, we can't afford a buyout right now. And that's fine. But if you keep on getting them, you're not even season tickets won't be renewed. NIL support, even if you think you don't have much now, right? It's going to continue to wane and wane and wane if you get Luke Fickell. So you are going to lose money, even by keeping Luke Fickell a little bit. Because that's the thing about today's day and age. You need someone that if you're in a bad spot, you need to be able to turn it around, and you need to be able to get in somebody there that can rejuvenate the donors, rejuvenate the boosters, rejuvenate this fan base a little bit. That's what Wisconsin needs. They need somebody that can come in there and kind of redo the whole thing and built it up, like Barry did all those years ago. That's where they are right now. They're in like 1989 Wisconsin, when Barry got there, and it was, it was a dormant of a program. Whoever takes this over, assuming a move does get made in December, that's what they're going to be taking over. Weird situation. But and like you said, Luke's not a bad coach. It's just, it started off bad with the scheme change, and it just hasn't gone well. It hasn't gone well, but it's unfortunate, and it's just bizarre to see them like this. This is the worst I've seen them in my lifetime. It's crazy.
It is so insane. You brought in the guy. I mean, Wisconsin, a winning program, one that was competing for Big Ten national championships. They were trying to get over that hump, right? Get to the playoffs. Let's hire the guy that brought a G5 team to the playoffs. They have this big, long bowl record. They're like, we got this. We can make this happen. And then he flops, and he actually breaks the bowl record for you. I mean, this is the type of stuff that nothing else gives you, right? NFL football doesn't give you. NBA doesn't give you. This is the kind of craziness of college football. Obviously, it's heartbreaking for Badger fans. We're not trying to, to twist it in or anything, but it is something that just, it makes college football what college football is. It's such a crazy time. It's such a crazy thing. So, Ted, thank you so much for coming on, man. Appreciate this. Really good doing a fact or fiction with you. Let people know where they can find you at one more time before we get out of here.
Yeah, so for the Big Ten stuff, you can find me, Big Ten Ted, on YouTube and your podcast platform at Big Ten Ted over there. And then I've got some Oregon Duck specific content as well. That Show Out West is the name of the podcast, at Ted and the Ducks on Twitter. And I do some written work over at Scoop Duck as a part of the On3 network. So you can kind of find stuff all over the place. I have zero free time, but hey, it's fun. It's fall. It's football. This is what we like to do. So.
That's content creation for you. You're always looking for the next piece of content. So thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it. Join us on Saturday night for Power Rankings episode after the final Big Ten game happens. And then you can join us Sunday night for the recap. And then, of course, previews and everything on Tuesday nights as well. Big Jeff on Thursday nights when you can hear his picks, his previews for the biggest games of the weekend. We appreciate you being here. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, listeners. Have a good one.